Temur variant has a fair bit of extra game against the standard blue-red just because of the addition of the Questing Druid. The cadence of the matchup is very closely tied to expressive iteration, and being able to have more than 4 copies in your deck turns out to be really good. So we're gonna see Brandon lead with the Murktide, immediately answered by Unholy Heat.
Shock. So I'm gonna bet a Darcy. Yep. And then a Preordain. So good. Called it. Let's see. Check my card.
Preordain has kind of brought DRC back, which is really nice to see.
Was it
I think in the brief period of time where Bowmaster was legal and dominant, and Preordain was not legal, DRC was kind of rough into the face of Bowmaster. Now that Preordain is legal and Delirium is so much easier to, I mean, not that it was hard to get to begin with, but now that it's like, turn 2 Delirium is much more consistent, Darcy has come back.
And on the play, obviously, you don't have to worry about Bowmaster on turn 2.
Yeah.
And you can get it going fast enough. A bobble.
Yeah, it's funny the switch that kind of happened. So I think before Bowmaster was printed, a lot of this were playing like 2 DRC and 4 Shredder, but it's like completely switched. In this
they show each other, but not us. Inconsiderate. Matt, of course, playing the controlling role here. Somebody's read who's the beatdown.
That is a lot of how this matchup goes. It's like if you're on the play and you establish Ragavan, your opponent needs to be
just answering things.
Yeah, they need to have the heat. They need to have the bolt on the play.
Yep. Preordain. I bet we're going to be seeing a lot of the same stuff going on. It's ultimately a lot of this is in the early game. It's a lot of play draw dependency, kind of based on the die roll. But when you here we go.
Yeah, so here we see Seek the Beast.
Was it
Questing Druid.
Questing Druid. Questing Beast is something different.
So at end of turn, Brandon is going to cast Questing Druid for its adventure side, which is Seek the Beast. Seek the Beast, it's an instant. You exile the top 2 cards of your library, and until your next end step, you may play them. So because it's an instant, Brandon can cast this on Matt's end step, and then
Matt eyebrows up. He's like, "Well, that's a lot of stuff."
Yeah, the 2 spells that were hit are a bit of a whiff here.
Yeah. Not bad.
Spell Pierce, and I mean Spell Pierce is good protection for this iteration.
Yeah, if iteration can grab land plus 1 mana creature.
Yeah,
I think that's not bad. If we
and
have land.
So yeah, Spell Pierce is doing a good job of protecting the iteration here. Matt has left up 2 open mana and is,
checking for the land. Has it? Unfortunately, that is Spire Bluff, so we can't utilize this Spell Pierce for protection.
Yep.
There it is. That's what Matt was hoping for in that interaction.
Yeah.
The Questing Druid did whiff a little bit.
Yeah, Questing Druid's really interesting. So I've been studying. I'm gonna call it studying and not just stalling before I go to work. But I've been studying Andrea Mengucci playing this Temur adventure deck, and he very rarely casts it in the blind. He kind of tries to engineer situations where he has knowledge of the top card of his deck.
Who is
and
this?
Can Andrea Mengucci.
Oh, okay, yeah. Great. Obviously pro player.
Yeah. But he tries to essentially engineer scenarios where he knows the top card of the deck and that it will be relevant with the Questing Druid. Obviously, you can't always do that here.
Hey, Chancellor, thank you for the subscription. It's very sweet of you.
All right, so we're going to see another Preordain from Matt. Looks like it found a bauble. There's a bauble trigger.
Yeah, a lot of the strange part about these kind of like tempo interactive matchups is it's ultimately what's going to end this game is a Murktide that can't get answered.
Yep.
That's pretty much always what's going to happen. Both of these players are going to be filling up their graveyards with a lot of instants and sorceries, so that when one of these Murktides doesn't get countered, there's no removal that can handle it.
Yeah,
nothing main board can handle these.
This is one potential. So it kind of goes either way, I guess. So one potential upside here, which Matt has played, is that Murktide's best answer to a resolved Murktide Regent on the opponent's side is Otawara. You just have to bounce it.
Absolutely.
There's no way around it.
Yeah, and the Otawara, obviously, on Matt's side is important.
The Murktide player is typically...
Spell Snare. Incredible here. And a counterspell to back it up.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a good fight.
Pretty big stack here just now.
Good fight on the
stack. Expressive Iteration out of Matt, a Spell Snare from Brandon, a counterspell from Matt, and another counterspell from Brandon.
But yeah,
pretty big win for Brandon here.
Yes.
Pretty island. And a pass.
But yeah, the Izzet Murktide list is pretty good at dealing with Murktide on the field because it has Otawara. The Temur lists...
Trading one for one, back and forth.
Yeah, it's really up to Brandon whether or not he's chosen to play Brazen Bar on the board.
Yeah.
Because the addition of a green card has kind of forced your mana base a bit.
Yes, absolutely.
So you lose one island because you want to go up on fetches and include a breeding pool.
Yep.
So you include, I think, an extra fetch land, and you take out Otawara.
Another Questing Druid.
Yeah,
These are good.
That's a fantastic hit. Both spells are going to be both castable and relevant here.
Here is basically a resolved EI. Or I'm sorry, a resolved EI that's going to be able to get some more advantage here. We're going to check out the top of Matt's deck. Thank you, Matt. We appreciate you showing us what the card is. A little bit of preordain action. Let's see the top two cards are there. No. Not going to see those. Let's see. Yeah. Having Brandon able to cast these preordain, or I'm sorry, these card advantage spells at instant speed, I think that's probably going to give a massive swing in Brandon's favor. Breeding Pool. Gonna start casting these questing druids.
Yeah.
Gonna get woman counters and build up over time.
It's no joke. I mean, it kind of looks like a dorky threat. You know, it's a 1/1 for 2 that grows when you cast more spells. But in these spots of the game where players are kind of starting to run out of resources.
Absolutely.
Or players are trying to just cantrip through their decks. Like, it grows.
Yeah. Yeah, and during the last match, we spoke a lot about incremental damage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is one of those times it's like, great. Really? You're going to throw the Unholy Heat
absolutely.
at the... Really?
Yeah. Unholy Heat's still going to... It's going to take a while for the Questing Druid to get up there.
Okay. I just think that, it's a tough call. This is not a deck that I main very often, so I imagine you'll know more than I would, but...
Yeah, I think you have to hit Ragavan there. I mean, it's
too
the mirror match. Like, it hits too much.
Your opponent's deck. Like, it's just more of your own deck. So,
all right, so we're seeing another
Questing
Druid.
And this looks like a Murktide. He's going to scoop it up. Yeah, unfortunate. Matt just had Ledger Shredder.
Yeah, Shredder is a fantastic card in this matchup.
Oh, yeah. Brandon.
This is one reason that I have kind of stuck by Ledger Shredder, is that it's fairly good in the mirror, and at least for a time, I think there were a lot of people that were on it. Mm-hmm. Just being able to, like...
And the card's great. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It's good. It's solid. It's... Man, I think that maybe now that I've seen the light and seen, I guess, or the darkness of the 5-color strategies, developing like massive card advantage. While the individual power level of each one of these cards that are in the Murktide decks are, very good as far as like fair standards. Mm-hmm. The unfair decks are just outclassing a lot of what's going on. So, very clearly, like, these players are both doing really well. I think they're both at least 4-0, right? At least 4. Mm-hmm. No, okay, they're at least.
They're at least 3-0.
At least 3-0. Yeah.
They could be
at least 3-1.
I should say 3 wins. Let's say.
Yeah, so they're both in really good standing. I like this deck, ultimately. A lot of fun, a lot of engagement, but maybe I'm just grizzled.
So sideboard, so relevant cards here. Matt can bring in potentially unlicensed Hearse. Meh.
Can you read through the whole sideboard?
Sideboard, Chalice of the Void. So anybody who faces off against me tomorrow, this is what you're facing against. 1 Chalice of the Void. No. 1, it comes in for Living End and Rhinos.
Absolutely, of course.
1 unlicensed Hearse. I could see it here. I don't really.
I like it as a threat, actually.
Yeah, I think it depends on how much you need to board out. 1 Spell Snare absolutely comes in.
Yep, phenomenal card.
1 Stern Scolding debatably comes in.
I think is great.
I think it's good against the Druid version of the deck.
Yeah,
The fact that it hits Ragavan, DRC, and Questing Druid.
I think it hits every creature except for Murktide.
Yep. It can hit, if they're playing it, it hits Shredder. If they're playing it, it hits Brazen Borrower. The only things it doesn't hit are Bone Crusher Giant, which some lists are playing like a 1 of.
Subtlety.
Which probably gets
and
boarded out in
Murktide.
this match. Yeah. Subtlety and Murktide, yeah. Fury, I think it comes in. Because it deals with turn 1 Ragavan in an emergency.
See, I disagree.
It's a grindy late game threat as well.
I disagree. I think that it is too fragile because it dies 2 bolt.
That's fair.
It costs 5 mana. If you're casting it for 0 mana, you are going down a card against a fair opponent and playing the same deck as you. And I don't ever want to play the mirror match down a card. And so I would not bring it in.
That's valid. On the same token, Subtlety.
Love subtlety here. Great tempo play. I would absolutely play that.
Yeah.
Because while you do go down a card when you're flashing subtlety in, when you're actually evoking it, your opponent gets time walked. So I think that it's pretty fair. And by the way, I think that endurance is tied with subtlety for being the most fair of the evoke models.
We've also got Flusterstorm. 2 copies absolutely comes in. Magus of the Moon and Alpine Moon stay out.
Yep, don't want those.
Cast of the Fire stays out.
Yep. It's more ping 1 removal, but I think with the amount that we already have in the main deck, it's tough to argue for that.
And 2 copies of Engineered Explosives I think also stay out.
Yeah,
as well as the 2
you're gonna
copies
board
of
wipe is
Dress
the same
Down.
as what your opponent's planning. Dress Down, notably, is a pseudo counter for Murktide.
It's cute. I think it's not good enough. I think Dress Down is really there for like Urza Saga matchups.
I agree.
But it is a pseudo counter to Murktide.
It's a counter.
But I think, unless they've had friendly conversation, from the results of the previous match, we have no idea whether or not Brandon is actually on Murktide.
Yes, we know that he's playing Temur.
Mm-hmm.
We've not seen the.
Yeah.
We did see him tap 2 mana and act like he was going to put something big and expensive in the stack. I don't know if that's Murktide.
All right, so in game 2, Matt is going to start with the Ragavan.
Swing for 2, offer the trade.
Yeah, offers the trade.
Block. I think you have to.
Yep. Yeah, I think as a Murktide player, you're very happy to go 1-for-1 for threats.
Mm-hmm. We're seeing very similar. If Brandon's going to answer this one, we're going to see a very, very similar play out like we saw last game.
Mm-hmm.
Preordain.
Probably digging.
How do you feel about the threat density in Murktide?
It's fine.
That was always the problem in Death Shadow.
Yeah, I quite like it. I think. What am I thinking? I think the nice thing is that most of your threats, really, I guess all of your threats, they're good early, they're good late. I think there's.
I would argue that Ragavan is not very good in the mid or late game.
I think it's still good. I mean, you dash it. It's not closing out the game, but
yes,
it's
but
still.
If your opponent has blockers, it just does very well.
Yeah, for sure. Ragavan's also like kind of fairly, to an extent, like play draw dependent, and there's certain matchups where it's just bad.
Yeah.
Scam comes to mind. Yawgmoth comes to mind.
Absolutely.
Or at least Scam on the draw comes to mind. Yawgmoth definitely comes to mind.
Any deck with blockers is just terrible.
But I mean, DRC.
Say.
DRC is still fantastic filtering. If you're playing Shredder, Shredder's still pretty good. at just like churning through your deck. Like both of these cards, help you churn through your deck and hit the cards that are critical to hit in the mid to late game, as well as getting in for damage. And obviously Murktide's great, unless you're going against Leyline Binding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when your opponent has Leyline Binding, what are you going to do?
Side out a Murktide, side in a Fury.
Working through a Preordain here for Mr. Matt. It just got warm in here.
Yep. So end of turn, we're going to see Questing Druid from Brandon. See if we see any response from Matt.
Big smile out of Matt.
Yeah, we can see the counterspell.
Spell. Not sure. Gonna counter it. Spell Pierce. No Spell Pierce. Okay, I think that's justifiably, man, I think that's definitely worth it for Brandon to Spell Pierce here. So we pretty much know that Brandon is down a 1-mana counterspell.
I think, Questing Druids are like a very good card to counterspell.
Darcy?
Like it at times it feels kind of bad to counterspell like the card advantage spell.
Perseveration. This is a good spot.
Yeah, that's good.
Brandon lost that. Could potentially crawl his way back here. The advantage was definitely towards Matt there.
Still anybody's game.
Absolutely. Definitely. The thing is with a lot of these mirror matches, these mid-range, long-term matches, what we're seeing is like small increments over time and kind of just positional advantage that can kind of shift very slowly, and ultimately it's whoever's cards are going to get the most value as they work.
So Brendan's able to find the land off of Iteration. Pass the turn over to Matt. Matt's going to cast a DRC of his own. Pass the turn. Unfortunately, missing a land drop.
Matt should have just casted his expression.
I know Matt's got a subtlety.
Very good. I feel like a little bit late for evoking it, and maybe a little early for hard casting.
Yeah. And at this point of the game, if Brandon has Murktide and decides to go for it here, we'll have mana for counterspell back up. You have to respond with subtlety. Not entirely sure the contents of Matt's hand, but having subtlety, blue card, and counterspell to respond to Brandon's own protection will be quite taxing. So here we're going to see
Matt cannot defend the Darcy. No more protecting the queen going on here.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine we're definitely getting in for 3. Now this game is shaping up very differently than the first game. Both players had more aggressive draws, had more threats, have drawn more cards, but what we're seeing here is that we're really just like getting to the point where we're just slamming into each other.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an Unholy Heat, a counterspell back up for Brandon.
So Brandon is trying to
very
protect,
obviously showing that we do not have counterspells. 2 mana. Expressive. Murktide from Matt.
1, 2, 3. Matt's probably trying to conserve Delirium here.
I think you have to.
Paid 3 mana for Murktide. Is going to exile 4 cards. Yep. Wasn't able to get the 7/7 Murktide.
Yep, unfortunate.
Yep.
There's a certain point in this game that you do just have to put it on the stack. With the small advantage like we were talking about earlier of Brandon kind of developing that, kind of crawling back and